Hello and welcome to another episode of CRT Sound System. And we're here with episode 65 and we're talking about Suikoden 1 and 2. Here with Reese as always. Reese, how are you?
I'm incredible, Tom. Happy to be podcasting here in the podcasting cylinder with you. How are you?
I'm fantastic, yeah. Really looking forward to talking about this game.
Yeah.
And we've got a guest, Abby Denton. How are you, Abby?
I'm doing great. Just let me know when we can start recording when Kurt gets here. And Kurt's sound system. I'm very excited to meet him.
Oh God, nobody's ever made that joke before, genuinely, and I love it. Oh God,
I'm
okay.
extraordinarily surprised to hear that on both counts. Really, thank you.
I love it.
Yeah,
No.
Kurt has been an absentee.
He's been absent.
Absentee third mic for the past 65 episodes, but we're
You
still
bought him
holding
out.
up hope.
Yeah, he's going to show up eventually. He's going to come back from getting those cigarettes anytime soon.
He's walking 500 miles. He's walking 500 more. Just to be the man who walked 1,000 miles to record episode 104 or.
Oh yeah.
Is that anything? No.
That's a bit sweaty, but we'll allow it.
Yeah, we'll create it because we're so charmed by Kurt's sound system as a character, who I assume was going to be ongoing. Kurt's coming back for the Undertale episode.
He's getting a whole backstory now. Yeah, he's fully within the ecosystem of the podcast. So yeah, we're talking about the Suikoden 1 and 2. So Abby, if you'd like to tell the people all about Suikoden.
I'd be happy to tell you all about Suikoden. I will tell you that Suikoden is a member of a genre that isn't talked about enough on the internet. It's an older brother's game. It's a game that your older brother had that was just a little too intellectual for you. And so you would watch and sort of absorb the story through your brother. And I think Suikoden is it's a little more classic than a lot of PlayStation RPGs where you start getting all the 3D, all the flashing lights for little children. This is a humble sort of almost Super Nintendo modesty. Everything's done in pixels. That's what you want.
Yeah, it does often get described as like a Super Nintendo game.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. Like Xenogears, you're able to there's a jump button. So even as, a stupid child, you can run around and feel like you're making some kind of an engagement with the world. Whereas Suikoden, you're sort of like, well, I know that I don't understand any of these politics. I'll wait for my older brother to explain it to me.
Yeah, no jump button.
For all I know, he was lying. So yeah, I'm no jump button. Yes.
Yeah, too concerned about the horrors of war to frolic. That's true.
Yeah. Breath of Fire. You have an action button that only some characters can use. Suikoden, no such thing. Imagine all 108 characters have their own unique action button.
Sounds dope.
Yeah, I think I sort of missed the older brother genre because I am the oldest of four. So I guess, but that makes a lot of sense because I had a lot of games that I had to explain to my younger brother John. So now that you've mentioned this, yeah, I think me playing a bunch of Final Fantasy games and my brother watching me play them and sort of trying to play them while I was hungover on a Sunday morning. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense now. You've really unlocked something for me here, Abby.
I'm quite pleased to contribute, but so you're saying you played older brother game that's kind of experimental. I've never heard of. No, you watch your older.
I don't have an older brother.
I'm struggling here. I can't really conceive of. This is like emergent gameplay. You found a new way of engaging with the work.
Yeah, being elderly like Tom, I also played this, and my sister would occasionally come in to be like, "Big sister, what game is this?" And I'd be like, "This is Suikoden. You gotta." And then she left. She was out of there.
Oh no!
But I did get to explain it for like a sentence.
I think it's a very, very pleasant game to watch as a younger sibling because there's all bright colors. There's always like a new character, and you're like, "Oh, what's that guy's deal?" And sometimes it's just like, oh, he wanted to cook a really hot curry, and you helped him get the ingredients, and then he swore his life to your army, and it doesn't have to be Shakespeare, but there's always something to ask. It's like, oh, what's that rune do? It's useless, to be honest. I'm planning to take it off of this guy, but it's locked on him.
Everyone's stuck with their runes, yeah.
Exactly, but it's compelling too because that curry was so hot that you can bring the chef into battle during World War II, video game World War II, and watch the horrors of war. That had to be a really hot curry for that kind of commitment.
Admittedly, they might not have gotten that week until Suikoden 3, which was the one that I spent the most time with, largely because that is the longest, most time-wasting game ever made in the history of video games. That's by that game, you're meeting people who are just like, oh, give me spice mix B, and not even bothering to name the spices. It has many great qualities. Sergeant Joe is one of the greatest video game characters of all time, but I thought I'd lead with a criticism as like an insult sandwich.
Nice.
No, I think only the first game is the one that that's the only one I have experience with. So like anything you could tell me anything about Suikoden 3, 4, 5, the tactics game. You can tell me whatever the fuck you want about that, and I'd have to believe you.
Sonic shows up.
Is he pregnant?
That's not till 5.
Okay.
5 takes place in the past.
Oh no! See, my knowledge ends at a certain point. I played the first 3 as an infant, but I replayed I'm in the middle of the second one now, and I replayed the first one right before you were supposed to come on, so it was very serendipitous.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I bounced. I didn't quite finish 3. I think because our memory card went corrupt or something. And then my brother stuck around for 4 and 5. By that time, he was away at college. I didn't really, I just sort of see snippets of it sometimes. And I know in 5, there's like a turtle man. There's like the kobolds and the dog men. And there's just like a giant turtle man with like old man hair. Sort of like the turtle pope in Elden Ring that everyone loves. And I like a weird looking turtle man. I like when they're not just Ninja Turtles. I like the Ninja Turtles as well, but I like variant turtle men.
Absolutely.
When you have to have so many characters in every game, you really got to run the gamut of different character designs eventually. Yeah, because like the whole 108 stars thing, is that in every game? Like there's 108. Is there 108 characters in every game, or?
I think they're like. It'll be like, oh, this guy doesn't fight, he sells things. Or 3, I know, had a lot of, like, this guy will sit at the back of your party and give you a bonus.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And then I think, there'll then also be people who aren't officially stars. Just to mess it up. Would you count this as a Mon game, like a Mon collection game?
It's definitely got some catch-em-all kind of vibes to it for sure, yeah. It's like it's also a bit of an early entry in the sort of cozy game genre as well, where you're just sort of you part of your sort of adventures around the world is just building up your castle and just having a bunch of shops to go around to, and like you said, having a chef, having various different sort of people that don't really do anything in battle or anything like that. But I think you can sort of opt to bring people to battle who are sort of not optimally for battling, I think, if you want. But you're generally inadvisable to do that.
Something I like about the game is that some of the 108 stars are just total mooches. They're just like, got food? Don't bring me to battle. I'm not going to do anything. And then you bring them to battle and they don't do anything. It's really funny. The one thing about it that separates it from the Mon genre, or the Monra, if you will, is that it it's less like you're snuffling around looking to fill out your roster, and more just like you'll like revisit a town, and then this character that you just brought because you needed an archer in the back line is just like, oh, this is where my father died. And then their sister shows up, and you're like, oh, that's how you unlock one of them. I no way you'd really know that unless you looked at a guide or just very very thorough, kind of doing everything every step of the game. And I kind of like that about it, is that it creates a very an aspect of discovery that I like, that it's sometimes often doesn't make a lot of game sense while you're unlocking some of the kind of like the the more esoteric third of your army. But still sort of like you'll just stumble into these people and have a little moment with them, a little adventure, and then they're just like, all right, well, they're just in my castle now. And then when you walk through the castle, you're kind of like reliving these memories of you playing through the game. I think it's a very vivid franchise, and it's, I don't know, that's part of what made it special to me. That's why I wanted to go back to it. It's because like I love JRPGs, but there was something about like putting your castle together for this noble war or whatever that really sat strong in my memory. Two especially. I don't really remember three. I guess for good reason. And
Now,
one,
sorry, I didn't mean to be too negative about 3.
no, that's it. No, the three is dead to us. It's too late.
It's there's you just gotta walk across fields a lot, and it's like there's no running really. Like one character has a horse sometimes,
Mhm,
but then
mhm.
everyone else is just like at a walking pace almost.
I hate walking
And
through fields.
they
I
keep
prefer.
sending you through. You can't just like it's not like, oh, you've unlocked this bit of the map, you can speed over it. You have to.
Mhm.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I can get that, especially because the game is kind of not afraid to make you just like kind of have to wander around, and it can be a little glacial.
And they sell 3 on the idea of the sort of the different viewpoints, and there's even extra viewpoints. I think there's like a dog chapter where you're just running around as a dog. Um, and so the idea of revisiting dungeons that have changed and work differently for different characters, I think there is something there that they didn't quite have time or budget or whatever to quite achieve there in making you redo the same dungeons, which is a shame. But three is great. The castle in 3 is a lot of fun because it's you're like the scion of this rich family in the castle introduction chapter, Thomas, who's
Mhm.
not one of the main characters. I don't think he's even a Star of Destiny. He might be.
Sucks to be him.
Yeah, yeah. And his parents are just like, go take over this garbage castle that no one cares about. And so he's running this castle that has like the captain of the guard is 10 years old, and like there's a fortune teller, and that's the extent of your economic power is you have a fortune teller in your basement. And he's trying to figure out how to make money, and then he realizes that he's actually at a spot that in the war that's brewing in the main game is like the most crucial uh, military spot to be able to have a base. And so everyone wants it.
Oh,
And
wow.
he's trying to raise enough money to keep the lights on. And it's a lot of fun. I love the Thomas sections of the game. It's a good castle. It's Budahak, I think is its name. I don't know if that's from something. Budahak
Not
Castle.
familiar.
It's my favorite one.
I
That's
look
cool.
forward to completing two and visiting Budahak.
Yeah. There's like he's got like a scary butler who seems to be like an undead who's been somehow bound to this castle. There's like a bat living in like a bat kobold man living in the basement. And you just go to the basement at some point. You can just talk to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll join you, whatever." It's a weird castle.
That
I
is
like
weird.
you've introduced a new withering insult. It's like, you're not even one of the 108 stars of destiny. Get out of here. You're...
That would destroy me.
Absolutely. I'd just be like, fine, I'll just go to my crying room. Goodbye.
Yeah, especially when just like random garbage people are a star of destiny. You know, just like a guy you found living in the streets who hasn't showered in 6 years. This guy's a star of destiny, but you don't get to be a star of destiny. Go fuck yourself.
Well, destiny is not always a glamorous role. Even though perhaps his stink has a role to play in the story that unfolds. We can't know.
I guess that's something about these games is a lot of games, especially Final Fantasy, like 13, everyone was always mad because every character can sort of juggle the same roles and they're sort of interchangeable almost because they want you to be able to play with any party after you finally unlock being able to change your party at the end of the game.
Yeah.
And in I would say probably an intelligent person in writing a game, you introduce a character, you're like, oh, this character has to be dealing with something. This character has an arc. They finish their arc by the end of the game. Whereas because there are 108 in Suikoden, it can just be like, oh, there's a Batman living in my basement. He's bored. Now we're friends. and like Thomas, for example, his whole cast, I think some of them are pretty good at fighting, but just numerically they'll never be like worth using in your party in the other chapters because that's not their function. They're this sort of background comedy sitcom almost. And you couldn't really do that in a game that had like 5 characters. You can have one guy where the gag is he sucks. No one wants him.
Yeah, you couldn't waste a character slot on that with, if you've got like 7 characters to do. Like, yeah.
But it's very like what is it, Umaro? We were talking about Final Fantasy VI earlier. You couldn't do that if that was half of the cast of the game.
Yeah.
But because you have a pretty big cast in 6, you get to get a little weird with it.
Yeah, that's true enough.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So we'll jump into the first block of tracks anyway. So let me pull up my notes here. So the first track we have is Royal Palace Consultation, which is the castle background music. Then we have Beautiful Golden City, which is the sort of the city that surrounds the castle. Then we have
Beautiful Golden City, where the girls are so pretty. Where I first laid my eyes on Thomas of Budahak.
Please take us home.
Oh, you've mixed up the two there. Wow, good job. Then we have Black Forest, which is Lecchnaut's mansion. And then we have an old Irish song, which is the Dragon Knight's Fortress. So all the music in the game is done by Higashino, Tappy, which is an interesting pseudonym, Taniguchi, Mayuko Kagesita, and Hiroshi Tamawari. Very few of these tracks I have here are actually credited to one specific person, but I'll try to call them out where they are. interesting you brought up Enya there in the break while we were listening to that track because yeah, I feel like this soundtrack is one of those ones like Chrono Cross and Xenogears that sort of was coming out around the time of whatever weird boom in like Celtic music that was happening, especially in Japan. For some reason, they got really into it in like the mid to late 90s. And you could hear it in a lot of video game soundtracks. And in fact, I have a track later that will probably facilitate a bit more discussion on that. But yeah, it's definitely a weird time in video game music for sure.
Yeah, I wonder if there was a new like a popular synthesizer that had been released that I always think of there's like reverb on a piano that we had in I think that was an old Irish song at the end there was it's a newer Japanese song, but it's called an old Irish song. And I always, that sort of reverb over piano always makes me think, oh, it's a beautiful temple with flowing waterfalls all around.
It's definitely got that pure moods kind of vibe to it.
Yeah. I wonder if...
I think a lot of, maybe the Pure Moods albums probably were a big influence on that. There's an Ease soundtrack, like an arranged Ease soundtrack that has some tracks that are sort of have that sort of spacey Pure Mood sound to it as well, and they use a lot of that sort of that reverbed piano as well to achieve a very particular vibe.
You got me curious now. There's probably a word for the like the distinction between a development in art that's due to a change in technology versus one that's due to like a popular guy who changed the industry. Like someone has made something significant that everyone's trying to copy. And that seems like a distinction that people have to do a lot, but I wonder what the word for it is.
Yeah, that is I'm not too sure myself actually now that you mention it, but I'm sure there is I'm sure there's some particular word that an academic has come up with for us.
maybe it was just,
maybe we should coin one.
Exactly. Maybe it was Denton. It was Denton Tech.
Ooh, thank you. Abby Denton. The CRT sound system put it first. I learned recently the word prosopography, which is mapping out the connections between people, sort of like a family tree, but when you're sort of also like this guy controlled ExxonMobil and he willed this to his son and his son controlled
like your 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of thing.
Yeah. Just a fun word you don't really use much.
What was the word again?
Prosopography, I believe.
Prosopography. That sounds like something fun to do just with any group of people. Just be like, she was dating him, and then she broke up with him for her. And
yeah.
You just sound like my aunts when they get together.
They're scientists. They're prosopographers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the gossips of the academic world. I'll tell you, we were listening to the Suikoden soundtrack track called An Old Irish Song. And I'll tell you that while I was preparing for this, I was talking to my partner Morgan, who plays the bass. She's kept up with her music studies after school, which I have not. I haven't touched a violin in a long time. She plays the bass, and I asked her, what do you think about music? How do you talk about music? And she said, well, I don't really have any opinions about music, but I hope that if you quote me, you pretend that I talk like this. Like an old Irish woman. And I said, well, I'm not sure how that'll go down with the host of the podcast. But now that we've listened to an old Irish song, I think it would actually be incredibly funny to just abuse you like that and quote her with the... She had a bottle of whiskey in her hand, which was making it hard for her to strum the bass. But it, she seems to feel that it helps her connect to her ancestors.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I would say Tom's used to the Irish gawking from guests and his co-host, where I ask him such scintillating questions is, do you have Christmas in Ireland? Are you sure?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It's funny sometimes because just being Irish, people think just that it's a completely different world. But for the most part, everything is the same in Ireland as everywhere else because we live in a completely homogenized world now.
Yeah. How has the high street in your town changed? I don't know if you've changed towns over your life.
I mean, it's changed the same way as every high street has. Yeah. Now I do live in a different town to the one I grew up in, but yeah, you can say the same about everywhere, really. Like, yeah.
What's the thing that you're the most? They took this from me. The globalists. The Starbuckses. Is it Starbucks?
No, it's probably
Costa,
like
Cafe Nero.
we've got Starbucks, we've got Cafe Nero, and we've got Costa. They're all terrible. But we don't have any of those in my hometown. Actually, there's very few chains because like the town I grew up in is like a population of 2,000-3,000 people. Like it is tiny. So like I remember in the mid 2000s somebody tried to open a Subway franchise, and it failed within like 6 months because nobody wants to go to a fucking Subway in Dingle.
I'm sure the the landscape is so much more beautiful. You wouldn't want to go underground.
Exactly, yeah.
Man, Subway is terrible. Like everything's $1 million, and it's worse than it's ever been. And every year or so, I'm like, oh well, maybe it's worth it. Maybe that's just the cost of running a business. But no, it's just worse. But they do sell foot-long cookies, and there's a chap that I work with who was eating one of these terrible foot-long cookies, and some other people in the office they were talking about going to Subway, and my friend physically hides his cookie, and he says, I hear those foot-long cookies they have are great. I heard from someone. And I love the conflict between, wanting to be nice and help someone while being ashamed to tell them why you're advising them of this. While advising them to follow in your footsteps, it's Hamletian. There's so many conflicting movements. Sorry, go on, Reese.
I don't think. I mean, I think I'm very sympathetic because I don't think if I have not had a Subway foot-long cookie, but I've looked at it in the window and just been like, I could eat that. That's something I would eat. And so I just have a lot of sympathy for that conflict.
Oh, 100%. I can understand if you eat a foot-long cookie, that is a secret you are taking to your grave.
Yeah,
100%. 100%.
Number one, the shame of going to Subway, and then number two, the shame of like taking a fucking foot-long cookie out of Subway.
Yeah.
The thing is that Subway used to be defensible with the $5 footlong. You have to be like, well, we all live in sin. This footlong was $5. You can go, of course, I see nothing. But now the footlongs are like $12, and they're named after like football terms, and I'm just incandescent with rage about it. I wish they would take a bulldozer through the Subway, leaving a gap in the strip mall.
I think it is weird that Subway's, the sponsorship deal went away long ago, but I do think it's funny that Subway has gotten worse roughly in the same pace as Jared. His life has fallen apart.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if there's some sort of lich working at work there.
Yeah, the Subway is his phylactery or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Do you think that if they made Suikoden today, they would put a Subway in your castle and Jared would be one of the stars?
I mean, today, certainly wouldn't have Jared. You'd have to mod that in, and I would. But
what do you think is his stat spread?
I would say probably extremely high luck.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
And nothing else.
And nothing else.
It just has a rune where it just sits down and eats a sandwich, but you have to be in the back line. Or no, I guess he's the star, so he needs to be in the front line.
Is he bludgeoning people with the sandwiches?
I think but perhaps here's my pitch, because he always had it was all about the weight loss, right? And for a while he did the giant pants thing. So I think he's got like
Oh
giant
yeah, yeah.
pants, like a net
I like this.
that
Like a
that he would
you
entangle
tie
his enemy.
like a weight to either leg, and it's like a
Mhm.
bolo.
Exactly,
I like
exactly. And
this. I
then he's
love
got
this.
the foot long where it goes in for the kill like a gladiator.
Oh my god, I've never been so scared of this man. That's not
But-
true. I've always been scared of this man.
yeah.
I like to imagine someone listening to this who hasn't looked up anything about Jared since the ad campaign and is just like, man, people hate fat guys so much that even when they lose weight, they're still afraid of them.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why we hate
Horrible to
Jared here
see.
in the pod.
Horrible to see.
it would be quite sorrowful to find out we broke the news to somebody about Jared.
Oh my god. What a way to find out.
Yeah.
Uh,
With news, I guess there's sort of like a bell curve, right? Where it reaches a critical mass where everyone knows.
mhm.
And then it trails off where no one's talking about it anymore. So it's probably like once you've crossed that bell curve, you may never find out about a lot of things.
Mm.
Like children today find out about 9/11 like you're 12 and you have a history class, I guess. I don't know
Exactly.
when would you find out?
Yeah.
Children
I don't
today
know,
find out
you're
about
looking up you're
Suikoden,
looking up
third grade history because it's so industry defining.
Imagine tuning in to this to be like, oh, I can't wait for them to talk about Suikoden.
find out
I have
about
terrible
9/11.
news.
We could talk
The
about
viewers, listeners of the podcast, turn on the television, any channel.
Oh, when did Suikoden 3 come out? Because I wonder if you could make an argument about like the our understanding of politics changing an effect because these are very sort of realpolitik
Mm.
July
influence.
11th, 2002.
Yeah. I
So
guess there wouldn't really have been time to change the whole thing, but it is interesting that this is the one. Well, like I guess 2 was also thematically very much about what side you're on is almost an accident of history.
Yeah. It's it seems to be a common theme in the ones I've seen anyway. Yeah, the one thing that I actually do find interesting, just compared to other RPGs, is the giant battle modes that they do. If people haven't played it, like you have these sort of plot points where you have larger battles that aren't like a standard RPG battle, and you basically go into this sort of very rudimentary sort of strategy mode, like a Romance of the Three Kingdoms kind of thing.
Mhm.
And you basically just select your units, and it does a rock paper scissors based on the unit you select, and then it decides whether you won or not. Basically, it's very rudimentary, but it is sort of it's in all of the games, is it, or is it in most of the games? I'm not sure.
I think it's in all of them. It's different. It'll be like in 3 you're moving on nodes on a map.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah,
There's
it's
a bit
certainly
more
the
to it in 3.
definitive. I would say it's a definitive sort of style point, even more so than the castle. At least in my understanding, is this battle mode where, and I think too because it's the characters you collect become sort of units in this battle. So you're just like, oh, this Jared here is pretty useful, pretty useless. But then once you have all 3 of the dipshit team, they
Oh
can
yeah,
unleash the
they have
dipshit
that
super
little.
attack that's actually
Oh
pretty
yeah,
good.
yeah. The army of chipmunks. I love the army of chipmunks. I'm so glad that Suikoden has like a chipmunk squad.
I don't remember
Makes me
the
very
army of
happy.
chipmunks, Abby. You're
There's
gonna
like
have to.
5 chipmunks are on the Stars of Destiny. And you can just have a party of chipmunks and they have a unite attack. They're great. Might be squirrels, I forget. Dogs.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I suppose like as you pick up people who are part of like similar the same race, or they have like an affiliation in some way, just sort of it sort of fleshes out their squad for the fights. I did forget about that element actually, so thank you for reminding me of that.
And then
Yeah,
there's the duels too.
Oh, the
Which are
dudes,
always
yeah, shit.
and then there's also all the mini games with, like Sugoroku I think this Chin something like a dice rolling
Oh
gambling
yeah,
game,
yeah.
and there's a bunch of little gambling games. And
Mhm.
I wonder if the PlayStation was like a sweet spot between the cost of development and the versatility of the technology, where I think the RPGs of this era had the most sort of bespoke little bits.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, you wanna do a duel between two characters. Like, I feel like any time after or before, it would just be in the usual battle system. But for this, they've built
Mhm.
their own. Whereas even in
Yeah,
the PlayStation 2, you start to see that a lot less.
and
And you'll try to do things in the main engine more. Sorry, go on.
the duels are really cool too because they're like fittingly pivotal. Like
Yeah.
there's a duel in one where you can kill the person you're dueling who's kind of like an important character to the story, and then they're just fucking gone. And you killed them, dog. And
That's
but
so mean,
there's
but I love it.
yeah, but there is a way to, I think, if you, I forget exactly what you have to do, but that both people can survive the duel, and then that's how you get all 108, and you unlock the extra little flourish in the credits or whatever for doing that. And that's kind of what I was talking about before with these moments of discovery in the game, in the series,
Mhm.
that I think serves it so well. It's sort of like it's a fitting alternative to Final Fantasy, which is such a heroic, legendary, epic type story, where it's just like, no, this is grounded in the real lives lost in war. And I don't know, it's wonderful.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Whereas on the other hand, in Xenogears, you have a pink, fluffy cat creature that was genetically suppressed. They genetically suppressed its ability to grow to the
Mhm.
size of a Godzilla. And it evolved to fight using annoying noises, I believe is in the lore.
I
That's how
believe
they
that's
fight.
correct. Yeah.
And it's able to magically heal robots somehow.
It's the only
It's
fucking
just
way to
I,
heal
I,
your robots. It's so annoying. Like I love Xenogears, but the fact that there's only one character that can heal your robots is very frustrating.
it's the one no one likes. I love Choo
I,
Choo.
And
Love
yeah,
Choo
Choo
Choo.
Choo sucks, but like is
I,
also
I, I am unfamiliar with Choo Choo, but I feel a lot of kinship with Choo Choo hearing that description.
She pretends
Uh,
to be a stuffed animal for the first like hour of her existence in the game.
yeah. It's a yeah. Xenogears is
Great.
weird. One day we will talk about that game as well.
It's another one where like every bit, at least until they ran out of
Hmm.
money, like they're just like, oh, and now there's this whole, oh, you're a prisoner and you're stuck in this city, and like everything is directed in a
Yeah.
way that I guess is sort of prohibitive now. You wouldn't really see a game
Mm.
that puts that much effort into the mise en scene,
Like yeah, there's a whole
and I
3D
really
fighter,
admire it.
like a 3D arena fighter in the game.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's just a completely separate mode. Yeah, it's wild.
It's great.
They were really fucking shooting for the moon with that one. um, but yeah, no, I think with this as well, like probably the fact that it's not fully polygonal really helps with it being able to sort of do a bunch of different things and try different modes and all that kind of shit, and have so many different characters because like you don't have to model all these characters, especially the ones that aren't sort of doing very much in the game, that aren't
Hmm.
important to the plot or anything like that. I think that was probably a bit of a problem with, say, Chrono Cross, which had a bunch of characters, but almost none of them had any identity because
Yeah.
the game sort of had to account for you having any given character in your party at all times.
I having just now that I'm a professional video game developer, um, having put out this sort of not really prequel, but like a demo of the Blade of Cutie Pants, where I was trying to lean on the advantage with 3D, where you can just sort of have a skeleton and repeat the movements of the same skeleton on different models to animate sort of various different people, which I
Hmm.
thought would save a lot of time. But then then you can't change the frame. You can't like a guy with bigger biceps will animate differently from like a scrawny little dude.
Yeah,
And
Makes sense.
yeah, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to fall victim to that hubris, as you say, Chrono Cross.
yeah, for sure.
Chrono Trigger, I guess that was the also had the same thing where there's a trial and you have to defend your actions 8 hours ago in the game. And I that was as the tail end of the Super Nintendo. So I wonder if there was a period where all the game designers were thinking in these terms. What is it? The Legend of Zelda has I forget what it is, like a tiny sand garden diorama is how they described a lot of the early Zelda games.
Mhm.
They had to sort of abandon as they reached Breath of the Wild scale. And I wonder if that's a helpful way to think of these, where you're presented with the little tiny castle diorama, and you're building up your castle diorama, and then you go to this town, and this town has a little, what is it? There's like a cooking battle, right? In Suikoden 2, I think, or did I imagine that?
I haven't gotten to that point in my playthrough, but I believe it.
I believe that with my whole heart, but I have no idea. I have not yet played Suikoden 2 for a number of obvious reasons. Number one being that it costs 300 fucking euros to buy it here.
Can I tell
it
you?
emulates well.
Can I tell you the worst thing about Suikoden 2 being so expensive is we gave it away to a friend of ours.
Oh no.
There is a cooking battle. I did not remember because there was also like a cooking game that was done with sprites that looked like Suikoden 2, and I thought maybe I was getting them confused, but no, it's real.
I definitely like the idea of a diorama to talk about these games, and I think that that aesthetic becomes a little bit more explicit when more modern games do 2D stuff, and it's got this I don't know, sort of just this clockwork paper quality to it, because partially because it's 2D, of course, but also just like just the kind of perfect simplicity of it, where it's like very easy to understand, kind of spatially. And I approach kind of this game specifically too as playing it like when I was pretty young, not like a kid, but still like it makes me think of stuff like the early Final Fantasies, and it's something that is not necessarily lost in 3D, but the third dimension creates just like a lot of extra complexity that has to be utilized and figured out. And I think once got to this era of JRPG, they're definitely they've got the diorama down to like just like an incredible science. And it's very interesting to me, the stuff like the duels and the cook-off mini game, that makes it feel so lived in, especially as I'm probably gonna compare this to Final Fantasy a whole bunch more, but it works in making it feel lived in.
I think that's fair.
Talking of Final Fantasy, maybe the SNES Final Fantasies I think map onto this, where the 4 or 2, the one with the moon whale and all the piggies, is it's telling a story that then affects the mechanics, not as much in the US release where they've taken out half of the mechanics, but where you'll go through a period where you don't have a healer, and that's affecting how exhausting the dungeons are and stuff like that, because you don't have this control of customization. And then they did 5, which is almost the opposite, where the story is almost in the background and it's just for someone who's really into the battle system, and that's its own appeal. And these two kinds of games, like a game where the story is affecting the mechanics, like the base mechanics, a lot, and then a story where you're sort of freed from the story when you want to engage with the battle. But then 6, where it's all these little, like, you go to an auction house, you go to like a dungeon where you have to change teams a lot to push switches. There's a bit where you're putting your party back together. These are all just these sort of micro games.
Sections where you have to take
and that, I guess, is harder to develop now. But that was, I think that's the best kind of RPG, and you'll never see them again because you need to spend $8 billion rendering horses.
100%. And I think too, what sinks it, so completely. I think I'm using positively here for some reason. That it is tied to the characters. Is that you do have sort of like a large cast to deal with, but it's you're going through these moments and you're like, oh, because I looked behind a tree and found this flying squirrel. This moment is a little bit easier than it could have been if I just sailed on past it. And that's just like the simplest version of it. And so, helps you really bond with these various characters, because you're going through it in the gameplay as well, and it feeds into the discovery I was talking about before, where it's just like it feels so large and anything can happen. Where it's almost overwhelming. It's hard for me not to look at a guide when I'm playing Suikoden 2, because I feel like a sense of FOMO is just feel like I don't want to miss all the pals I could have in this world, much like in real life. And so
Aw.
it makes it really compelling to me, and it's been fun revisiting it because I feel like I had this memory of what the game was, because I was just like, oh yeah, you collected a whole bunch of people for your castle and you felt connected to them, and I feel like fairly rarely has something held up for me like going back and replaying these games.
Delightful to hear. All right, I think we'll jump into the next block of tracks. Just the last few here from Suikoden 1. I have tiny characters in a huge world, which is the map theme. Then we have Confrontation with Monsters, which is the battle theme. Theme of Tension Impact version, which is an event theme. And then we have Rockland, which is a great...
That's my favorite actor
for...
from the 60s.
It sounds like it, yeah. And then the last track is Ultimate Enemy, which is the boss theme. But yeah, no, the boss team is one of those boss teams that always just instantly fills me with anxiety. I think it's because it has a really weird time signature or something. It's just like as soon as I hear it, I seize up a bit.
It's up there with Chrono Crosses, the introduction.
Yeah,
You're
there's
gonna
just
have a fight.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And I think a lot of good sort of boss and battle themes will start with a little bit of a sort of a little intro that sort of goes, okay, get the fuck ready. We're about to throw down. But what I was saying at the start as well, the map theme as well is such a is such a little, just a great map theme, especially when you first open up the world map in the game, and you just get this you just get this little sort of string opening, and it's like, all right, time to go and do some fucking adventure. And yeah, a really good world map theme can really set the stage for a good RPG, especially of this era, when games had world maps.
Ah, the good old days.
Fondly thinking.
Yeah, return with a V to fucking world maps, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now they barely have worlds; they just have gotcha.
God,
Yeah.
that is
Season passes and so forth.
And and I've also noticed that young people these days aren't as respectful to me as they should be. That's another complaint that I have. And my back hurts more.
100%. And we should go back to a world where our joints are not bothered by the cold. And Konami, we need you to pull it together and get on that.
Yeah, get the remaster of this game out. You've already delayed it enough at this stage. I think it's due to come out in March.
Oh.
I'm not too sure. I should have double checked before, but yeah, it's for anyone who isn't aware, there's a remaster of the first two games coming quite soon. supposed to be this year, and hopefully within the next couple of months. And that's part of the reason I haven't sort of gone back to play either of these games for this podcast. Because I was just like, I'm just going to wait until the remaster, because I do really want to replay the first game and finally get around to playing 2. And the remasters look like a good way to do it.
I think the remaster is going to be sick, especially because I think 1 is a great game, but there's I think 2 just has a robustness to it. That's very sensible to sort of they knew what kind of game they were making, what they liked. They can make more of it. Probably had more money. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm curious to see how if there is any AI stuff to absolutely ruin it.
That would be unfortunate. It looks, the screenshots that they've released so far look good, but it's hard to tell and say for sure. But at least I think they've sort of brought both of the games to parity as far as like the actual like things like world maps, because the second game definitely looks a lot better in certain scenes. Even though it does use a lot of the same sprites over again, I think. At least where the characters are appearing again. But like the world map is a lot more detailed in the second game and things like that. And I would hope that they'll sort of bring both of them to parity on that at the very least.
Yeah. We were talking a little bit in the break about the details in the Suikoden songs, and how it, at least for me personally, it took me listening to it on YouTube separately to really appreciate it and go like, oh, this is actually great. When I was replaying it, I was like, this is good. These are perfect for the scene. I feel it's set. But maybe I wasn't like, enjoying its resplendence as much like I can with some soundtracks. And I think that there was a comment made by Abby about how sort of like Konami versus Square or Capcom is Konami had a much more detail oriented, sort of like less bombastic take on sort of like the music, which makes sense considering these are all very similar in terms of the composers that worked on. If you worked on one Konami game, you worked on 100 of them. Seems like.
If you look at the list for anybody who's sort of on this soundtrack, they're on basically any Konami game you care to think of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used this episode as an excuse to re-listen to the Tokimeki Memorial soundtrack.
Excellent.
Which is absolutely perfect in every way. And I was really marveling at the Zoo track, which has like a very silly kind of like getting close to farty like horn noise in it, but it's just like, also you're just like, you're at the zoo. We're having a good time. Sun's out. Monkeys stink. And it just felt perfect for it. And so I don't know. I'm really enjoying the sort of like the identity that I'm discovering with these Konami tracks of being more less a star of the show. I think it's wonderful.
It's delightful.
I remember, I guess a couple years after this, and I don't know the march of technology, but I remember being loose in a music store and playing around with a synthesizer. And I remember I saw it had a setting for the violin, and I'm like, oh, well, that's great. This is perfect. That I don't have to learn it anymore. I can I don't need to learn where like the eighth whole note over the E string is. I don't need to learn where to put my finger for that because it's just here on the keyboard. And then I pressed it and tried to figure, and it's really hard to make strings sound good on a synthesizer, but they've managed to do it with the MIDI. Here, I guess I don't know if these have been remastered from the PlayStation sound chip or anything, but it's amazing how much expertise can improve the sound of a synthesized violin.
Yeah, I believe I don't believe these are sort of created by the sound chip on the PlayStation. I think they're like they're recorded. PlayStation could do like had its own sound chip, but it could also do like just normal CD audio. So some games did it, some games did like a mix of everything. So like it's hard to say for sure. But I'm pretty sure the soundtracks that I have here, which are the official ones, are the same as they appear in the game.
Okay, huh?
Yeah, I'm reasonably sure on that. If somebody knows better, they can write in.
Well, they make it sound better than I could, at any rate.
Yeah. I do love a nice synthesized sort of trumpet or something like that. They always sound, they can always sound a bit farty, but it is still enjoyable regardless.
It's interesting that we have the cover of Suikoden 2 sort of blown up here, and in Suikoden 2 they definitely went to greater lengths to bring in the like the water margin inspiration from the classic Chinese novel Suikoden, the water margin, about 108 bandits, I believe. I've not read it. And the classic Chinese literature element of it, I feel like isn't as visible. I never noticed it, at least as a child. In Suikoden 1, I feel like was going for a much more Western fantasy vibe. And I it's strange that for us, I mean, that's definitely projecting onto you two, but the high fantasy RPG, the Western Euro fantasy RPG is not an unusual thing by any means. But by 2, and I think 3 also makes a very strong attempt to bring in all sorts of world architecture and styles in a way where Suikoden 1 feels much more landlocked to Europe.
Yeah,
down to the point of having an old Irish song on the soundtrack. And
indeed.
I think that's interesting because it probably didn't scan to us as an interesting choice, but then to do, here's what if this classical Chinese novel sort of was reimagined, taking place in a more European setting. It is a swing that we probably didn't even, at least I didn't even cop as a child.
Yeah, it was something that I remember reading about when I first played the game, but not knowing enough about whatever the hell water margin is to be able to say to be able to know for sure whether it's like accurate. Because at least when I was sort of growing up, we had like monkey magic. So like when I discovered stuff that was sort of drawing from that story, I at least had like some basis of knowledge from that, whereas like water margin and like Romance of the Three Kingdoms stuff, where I'm just like, this could be anything from like a very accurate representation to a complete pile of nonsense that has only like superficial similarity to the original text. So
I guess talking of superficial similarity, the what is it, Rio in Suikoden 2, the main character having sort of the archetypal Monkey King crown, I think is like, I wouldn't say that his character is based on the Monkey King in any way, and it's more of just a visual nod to give flavor to the world that I think is probably an interesting way to approach your design.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, up until today, I assumed that the main character of Suikoden 2 was the main character from Suikoden 1. They're not dissimilar in design.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So, today I've learned this new information.
He took off his bandana.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, we're going to go on to some Suikoden 2 stuff now. So I suppose we'll jump into the first block of tracks in Suikoden 2. So all of the music for this game was done by Higashino, rather than the 5 or 6 people that were doing the first game. So the first track we have is Adventurous Journey, which is the world map theme, or world map theme number 1. Then we have To a More Distant Place, which is world map theme number 2. Those That Don't Work Don't Deserve to Eat, which is Viktor's Fortress. And last track, which I will get you to talk about afterwards, Abby, is Beautiful Morning, which is the morning BGM.
Excellent.
Abby, you have a story about Beautiful Morning, I believe. So I want to hear. I want to hear this story about your brother recording Beautiful Morning or something like that you sort of half told to me before, and I want to hear the full story now.
I mean, I'll be honest. You told the entirety of the story.
Okay then.
Yeah, no. My brother and I both played the violin in school. Bad. I mean, he's stuck with his studies longer than I have. Yeah, trying to inculcate a love of music into your children is one of those things that I guess the child care books were recommending to my parents.
Kids
So they
never
said, "Oh,
appreciate that
you're
until it's
studying
too
the
late.
violin." Yeah, because the curse with the violin, especially, is twofold. Which is that the violin sounds terrible if you play it timidly, like it just sounds like this scratchy mess. But until you get to the point of being any good, it still sounds terrible. So you're gonna be timid, and so like getting over that hump and developing the ability to play it confidently is psychologically very difficult. And so you want to sort of start young enough that you're not cognizant of how you sound, I guess. And I don't know, the extent to which psychology plays into playing music, I think, is
that's not
weird.
something I've ever thought about. Yeah, because I suppose if you learn to play piano or guitar, like it doesn't sound worse if you don't play it loudly, or it doesn't necessarily sound worse. But yeah, I can imagine like somebody sort of half-assedly playing a violin sounds absolutely fucking awful.
It's dreadful. It's dreadful. I had a neighbor a couple of years ago who gave it up. And, it's very unneighborly to say, oh, I'm glad they gave it up, but I am.
No, that I have a very hot take about this.
Ooh, tell me.
Where it's just like I know that we're all supposed to be good communists here, and that involves going out there and helping your neighbors, getting to know them. So I did that, and boy, do I regret it. It's just it's a wonderful urge. I certainly think it's actually good, but still, it's just like now I have these insane people in my life that maybe I don't have the bandwidth for sometimes. So I would say consider the full geopolitical ramifications of your neighbors before you make any decisions surrounding them. So I have a lot of sympathy for finally a neighbor quieting down a little bit, and I could very well be that neighbor that irritates the people around me. I'm watching VHS Beyond at 3 a.m. Probably does not win me any friends.
Yeah. And I'm ashamed of this, but I have a different neighbor. I assume it's a different neighbor who was watching through Dragon Ball a couple of months ago at like the wee hours of the night, and I could tell occasionally I could recognize, I don't think I could recognize specific music cues, but somehow I was able to basically figure out where in the series he was. And I'm ashamed to admit that I was less annoyed by that than by the violin. And I politically and culturally and philosophically, I think that that's practicing the violin is a better thing to do. And yet, we're stuck in this horrible place. But anyway, so
I think that there's equal value to practicing the violin and practicing your Dragon Ball. Sorry if that's too
yeah. Maybe he was doing the moves in front of the TV.
Exactly. So slams.
So my parents were trying to, they especially cared about my brother because he was the smart one, and he they gave him a tape recorder so he could record lectures and take notes on them later and remember them. So he had this little tiny tape recorder. And we were so into it. We got to the what is it? There's a bit where you find a rare coin in a riverbed in Suikoden 2, I think. There's someone who's like, oh, I'll help you out if you can find this coin that I tossed in a river, and then you have to dig through all this mud to find this coin. I believe I might be that could have been a dream I had. I don't know. And you find it, and I think you're getting helped by your sister in the game, the main character's sister, and so of course I'm even more moved. I'm like, oh, sisters are helpful. That's nice to know. and then this song plays, this sort of ethereal, and it sounds kind of pitchy, it's a little, synth woodwinds are never going to sound like the most dignified instrument in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then over this little tape recorder, even more so, because it's cheap, it doesn't really pick up the whole spectrum of everything. But we loved it so much. My brother was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get the tape recorder. I'm gonna play." So I watch the TV while he goes upstairs. I don't press any buttons so that the music keeps playing. It's playing for like 10 straight minutes while he's digging up his tape recorder. It comes down. My mom comes in. She's very concerned why this song has been playing so loud and so long because we liked it so much. And he records it, and then my mom yells at him for wasting the tape. Which, to my knowledge, you can re-record over, but she may have
it's not a
known more
waste.
than
That's
I.
what they're for.
Yeah. But it certainly wasn't being used for his studies. Maybe it was the battery life, now that I think about it. But that was the first time I remember really thinking too much about game music, was this song that me and my brother were just, wow, we were big fans. If either of us were the kind of people, non-nerds who were capable of snapping our fingers, we would have done so. Unfortunately, I think he still can't snap his fingers. I figured it out. I can't whistle, but I can snap my fingers. I don't think my brother can snap his fingers.
That's
Too late for him.
That's unfortunate.
He has a doctorate,
Well,
but he can't snap his fingers.
Yeah,
so in many ways, I've
not,
won.
And not snapping his fingers.
Yeah. In many ways, I am the better sibling.
Absolutely. We're coming out strong on the pod that Abby Denton is the better sibling.
Thank you.
Really, just starting fights in families, which is what we love to do here on the pod.
Thank you very much. But yeah, it sounds awful pitchy on a tiny little tape recorder, but it sounds much better, with a bass where you're able to hear as Reese pointed out while we were listening to it. There's a nice little bongo going on in the background. The key change in that song is great. Very cute little. Oh, there's a fairy that's doing a dance song. It's one of those. Very
Absolutely,
cute.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a joy.
Just want to mention Miki Higashino for a moment, who is just rocketing right up my leaderboards. She was the composer on Gradius, which I think is fucking huge.
Hey.
And speaking of turtle people, she did the Genesis Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
Hey.
there's a lot of bangers here on this list. Tokimeki Memorial, Vandal Hearts, and it's an. I hesitate to say it's unfortunate she had she left because of her maternity. But there's certainly a hard stop to her career in when she had a kid. And it's and I just think that it's an interesting little body of work. And I was not specifically aware of her until this moment, or at least today. I think it's super cool, and I think that it's probably in underrated Konami artist, and sort of like Gradius is such a foundational just game memory for me. The fact that she was doing the beeps and boops for that is really cool. But it makes sense to me that Suikoden 2's soundtrack is as good as it is when you kind of look at her body of work, because she just knew how to dial in on these kind of like variety of concepts and really kind of like find a musical home for each of them, where they're doing the detail oriented scene setting thing, but still being just like super compelling and fitting whatever kind of genre or vibe the game was going for.
Do you have access on that list to who did the main theme from Sparkster? I just really like Rocket Knight.
I'll have to double check that actually. It might be one of those ones that's just accredited to like Konami Kukeha Club.
Cowardice.
Yeah, a lot of early Konami games is difficult to tell exactly who did what on them, because we've discussed many times in the podcast before. But companies like to hide who did things for a number of reasons. But like it doesn't mean that you're trawling through like interviews to find out if people worked on a particular soundtrack or what they did sometimes. But maybe we'll have a look at the break. I'll see if I can find out for you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so we'll jump into this last block of tracks anyway. So another couple here from Suikoden 2. We have Cornered, which is the battle theme. The Desire to Triumph, which is another battle theme. Cornered is the Luca battle theme. Then the standard battle theme is the Desire to Triumph. My apologies. A powerful
Very
enemy
Nietzschean
appears.
song title.
Yeah. A powerful enemy appears, which is the sort of mid-boss theme. Then the Silver Wolf, which is for a Silver Wolf battle. And then the last track is the dungeon theme, which is just called Labyrinth. one thing I noticed really listening to that last block in particular is just how much more electronic it is than the first game. Especially the last track, there's the synths and stuff are sort of almost like an ambient techno track at times. And all the battle themes have like break beats and shit in them, which is not really present in the first game. It's interesting to hear that too, because it doesn't carry exactly the same vibes then, even though a lot of the sort of motifs and stuff are repeated in the second soundtrack, and I presume throughout the whole series. I haven't really listened to the later games, but I have to assume a lot of these themes come back because they're quite iconic.
The tracks you had there, I kept thinking about how many would just have like 3 notes repeated over and over and over and over, getting very intense. With these last couple of tracks, more than any of the others. And it's strange to think in a post-synthesizer world that's very pleasant.
Yeah.
But in the old days, or just if you're trying to get this recorded, like there's just a poor musician in the corner who has to just play three notes in a perfect rhythm for like 4 minutes.
Yeah, that's tough. So I think we'll finish up there, because this episode I think is going to be one of our longest yet.
I'm terribly sorry.
We had a lot of yapping and it was great fun.
It's wonderful.
We had it absolutely fantastic. It was a real delight to have you on, Abby. So if you want to plug anything, tell people where they can find you on the internet and so forth, this is your chance.
Ooh, well, I'm on the Blue Sky. I was banned from Mark Zuckerberg's evil Facebook Instagram.
Oh no.
And everyone uses Instagram in LA, so that it was because I said the British Empire was a source of historic evil, and they marked that as hate speech, and I think that's unfair.
That's frankly underselling it.
Preaching to the choir here.
Yes. I was just trying to appeal to my girlfriend. Whenever we have potatoes in, I say, "Good news for you, Morgan. We've got potatoes in." And she says, "What do you mean? What are you implying?" And I'm like, "I'm engaging in an act of ethnic
banter
abuse." I actually didn't know in the 1800s there were like Italian-Irish race riots in the U.S. I never knew that. Like, that's wild. It's amazing how quickly someone can sort of be snowballed. And that's a terrible, by the way. Sorry. So I'm not on Instagram anymore. I'm on the Blue Sky and the Twitter. I'm abbydenton.bluesky or .bsky.social. I should actually engage my actual URL in there. I'm on Ms. Abatha on Twitter, MIZABITHA. And on itch.io now. I've got a short comedy game you can download called The Blade of Cutie Pants, with music by the great Sierra Binondo and the podcaster David Bulmer, who you may know from Sonic the Comic the Podcast. So look up The Blade of Cutie Pants, A Winter of Discontent on itch.io, and you'll have a great old time. I made an old school, like a Suikoden 1 era instruction manual for it.
Oh,
it's
cool.
out now, and I think you'll have a lot of fun reading it if you ever give it a shot. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Absolutely. I have to give a general order to all of the listeners of the podcast to check out Blade of Cutie Pants: A Winter of Discontent. Incredibly,
it's free, by the way. It's free. You can just download it.
It's free. No I think that you should pay Abby a couple bucks if you're able to, because it's good.
Oh, bless you.
The conversations that you have are quite not. I'm sorry if this comes out bad, but like you first blush on the game, you say like, oh, it's just going to be a silly little game with jokes, and you wander around, and it is that. But like when you're engaging in conversation with, I think her name is Lily, the deposed, not, she wasn't deposed, she abdicated power, and you're talking about these disparate subjects, like what it is.
The people were getting abused by the people.
The people just had to like,
that's my favorite joke in the script.
in your travels, you learn a lot of slurs. Gotta laugh out of me. Um, but there's also like just a lot of in-depth discussions about just sort of like various topics you don't hear a lot about, and it's interesting how like who they come from. I talked to the plant woman. I don't necessarily think we're going to get a discussion about grooming, although it makes sense because you have to bring her shears so she can cut herself. And I don't mean that how it sounds.
This all sounds much darker than it is.
Yeah, no, it's very it's my favorite joke is when you're talking to the bunny, the goblin, and she's talking
Excuse me, that's
about
a bunny.
bunny, just bunny,
Thank you, thank
and
you, thank you.
and
Sorry, that was
she
rude.
I forget exactly what the line is, but there's some comment is be like, oh, I thought it's just something about getting bullied when you have like a soft name that's feminine, and the Vanessa's response is you should sue. That was such a chef's kiss joke.
I fell back on that sentence so much in that script. I should ban myself from using it again. But I like that joke a lot.
It's great.
Thank you so much.
Referencing a boy named Sue to those in the audience who don't know.
It really means the world to me that you enjoyed that. Thank you so much.
So play it. That's an order, audience.
Yeah, links will be in the show notes as always. Reese, do you want to do any plugging or?
Check out my other podcasts, Video Games Are the Worst Thing on Earth, where we have a leftist and decidedly unhinged take on news and culture from the video game sphere. Alton's gonna at the Discord any moment now for our Elon Musk is bad at Path of Exile episode. Also, I am working on another episode finally for Existential Warfare. And yeah,
Excellent.
You can follow me at Reese V Ryder, all one word, and any of the places where you follow people.
Fantastic. Yeah. As for ourselves, we can be found on Blue Skies, CRT Sound System, CRT Sound System on Patreon if you want to give us money for some bizarre reason. You can get free bonus episodes and higher bitrate downloads if you go on the Patreon. Come and join us in the Discord. We have a nice time in there talking about various different things. If come on the show, come and talk to us about some nonsense, some game you like, whatever the hell you want, really.
Yeah.
Just if you want to come hang out with us for 2 hours and listen to music, that's fine too. So we're going to go out with an arranged track from an interesting album that I found a couple of months ago. So we talked about sort of Irish music earlier, and part of the Irish music sort of scene in video game music in the 90s was getting Irish musicians to come and actually do like arrangements and play on records. So probably the most famous one is the Final Fantasy IV Celtic Moon, which is arranged and performed and recorded in Ireland, I believe. This is a record called Melody of Legend, which is there's a series of 2 of them. They're just a bunch of different RPGs, and they've gotten people to come in and rearrange them, but the main hook on them is they have a man by the name of Ronan Browne, who is an uilleann pipe player. So for those who are not aware, an uilleann pipe is a bagpipe that's played with the elbows. And unlike bagpipes, it actually sounds really fucking good. So and like people who are really good at playing uilleann pipes can get some incredible sounds. So Ronan Browne is sort of well known. He did actually play on the Celtic Moon soundtrack. And he did 2 of these albums in the mid-90s over in Japan. And this track as well, the actual musical arrangement was done by a man by the name of Yuji Yoshino, who I didn't really know much about until I was looking him up recently. And the main thing I discovered is he mostly does anime, and he actually composed the theme song for Azumanga Daioh, and I fucking love Azumanga Daioh.
Oh, bar.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a really cool album. So there's two of them. They're called Melody of Legends, Chapter of Love, and Chapter of Dreams, I believe. And yeah, I say a bunch of really good Celtic style rearrangements. Sort of like, I suppose you'd call it sort of Celtic fusion, because there is some electronic elements and stuff like that in it too. So the last track then is just an old Irish song
Called
by
Whiskey in the Jar.
performed by Ronan Browne. And thank you again, Abby. It was a real delight to have you on. I really enjoyed this, and thank you,
for
Reese,
having
as
me
always.
on. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Good night.